Okay, for our next talk, it's going to be Seb Duerr. For evaluation is all you need.
All right. Hey, everybody, how we doing? Good? Yeah, the afternoon slump is coming on a Saturday. Thanks for everybody who's here. I'm Seb. I've been in the natural language processing and AI space since 2018, roughly. I worked at different companies, also as a data engineer at some point. I actually realized working as an AI engineer is somewhat being a data engineer because you shovel a lot of data into the LLM and then you get transformations back and you continue to use them. So yeah, I thought I'll talk a little bit about the evaluation part of large language models today. And before we start with some funny examples, we actually try to understand what makes it so hard to evaluate a foundation model. So a large language model such as GPT-5 or any closed model particularly. And there's 5 factors that I think research generally agrees on. One is the intelligence paradox, or the first one. The more intelligent any model becomes, the harder it is to actually test it. If you ever used GPT-2 or GPT-1 back in 2018, 2019, they did produce some interesting sentences. Nowadays, it's way harder to evaluate straight out of the box if a model is giving you gibberish or not. A second factor why it's hard to evaluate foundation models is they're open-ended in nature. There's just an incomprehensible large list of results we can get out of an LLM just to ask, I don't know, about the weather. If it's connected to a weather API, it could say it's not raining tomorrow in Washington, it's sunny tomorrow in Washington. It's probably gonna rain, but yeah, no, just kidding, it's a good forecast. Then there's the black box problem, again with closed models mainly. We don't know how they were trained, we have no influence on that. So we just deal with the results and we can prompt them, but that's all we have. Another fourth one, now I'm also showing them, is benchmark saturation. So there's benchmarks coming out all the time, but for instance, glue in 2018 was replaced by superglue in 2019, or MMLU from 2020 was replaced by MMLU Pro in 2024. Because LLMs just are getting smarter all the time, our benchmarks never saturate. So I think one of the easiest ways or best ways to actually evaluate these days what LLM you should test with is probably going to LLM Arena and understand what's trending there, because that usually gives you a good indication. And then, the last one. LLMs are increasingly better at doing tasks, also tasks we're not aware of. And I don't know how about you, but I'm really bad at coming up with poems that all start with the same letter, every word in that poem. Yeah, LLMs are great at that. But if you don't evaluate, things can go wrong. I'll give you a few seconds to read this. I don't know if you heard about it. Oh yeah, so in 2023, somebody just prompted the LLM of a car dealership to always sell Chevrolets, Tahoes for $1. And essentially the LLM would agree. Back in the day, agents weren't as famous, so I do believe that it wouldn't trigger an actual transaction. But nowadays, with agents being connected to databases, if people don't know what they're doing, these things could actually happen, and probably already do. Another one, I don't know if you guys seen that one. Google suggested to add glue to your pizza at some point, or to eat rocks because they help your digestion. And while they quickly brought that model down, I forgot which Gemini version it was, but an earlier one. These things happen all the time, and everybody's under pressure to deliver models fast. It's totally normal that we have funny examples, and you can also prompt the LLM in a way to be funny almost. But if it's a production system, you obviously want to avoid these because they could mean bad publicity. A last one, that's from a German media page that reported on it. So don't mind the German screenshot there. But in New York, a lawyer asked ChatGPT to help him with a real-life case law. And then ChatGPT would supply citations, summaries, case names, and everything. But it was all made up. So the judge that had to deal with it, he issued a standing order that AI-generated filings must be verified before they are being used. And yeah, that just shows that it's actually really important to care about evaluation a lot. And yeah, I guess one lesson to take away from all of this is if you use an LLM, particularly when you have public-facing features, then you want to run a lot of evaluation tests and yeah, not only target for facts, but also for prompt abusing, tone, ethical conduct, and common sense to make sure it doesn't sell your Chevys for $1. All right, that was a brief intro. The agenda changed a little bit from what was written online, but we're going to go now through a evaluation method. It's a little bit more of an abstract process to understand like how you can evaluate what are nuances. Then we're going to look at the evaluation process and some metrics. And finally, we're going to yeah, go with the eval-driven design that was proposed by OpenAI this year, and it's a really interesting use or read for data engineers and AI engineers. Eval methods. How do you evaluate? It's a bit historical. In the beginning, when we had language models, they weren't called large language models, but yeah, text-based models like GPT-2 or T5 from Google or BERT. Or even like other heuristical models where you use frameworks such as BASI or NLTK, you could often get far with binary scoring, and it still works. Like if you ask an LLM to conclude if something is spam or not spam, it will answer with true or false, however you prompt it. But that doesn't obviously scale to complex tasks. So from exact matching, we moved to, or it's another way to evaluate is for functional correctness. That works with code pretty well. Does the code compile? Or if we create a SQL query, does the SQL query actually return results or an error? These are things you can verify in certain scenarios. Another one, sometimes you want to use lexical similarity, where you want to check if the words from your generated answer match up with the expectation. And you don't want to use an embedding because that's computationally expensive, and you want to do like find a programmatic approach. Last year I talked to Perplexity AI, and they were, for instance, saying that they scrape the internet 24/7, right, to get the latest news and information into their vector database. And they need to use lexical similarity measures like n-grams, where they split up the text in different n-grams and then look for similarity to deduplicate their data. Yeah, they need to do this programmatically because it would be way too expensive to do it with statistical approaches such as semantic similarity, which is the latest trend. I think that was kind of hyped before the ChatGPT moment. So in like 2021, you could use models to run RAG features by embedding them, putting them into a vector store, and then essentially retrieve them and have a less incredible model or like large language model, a model that has less capabilities than a large language model, to actually then create a response. And for those ones, you don't have to depend on the exact word anymore because you embed the text in vector space. And the bigger your vector is, the more meaning you can capture. So that's really helpful. And yeah, you can capture the meaning over just the appearance in words. What is, though, a limitation is that it is expensive if you do it on large scale. So those are like the four classics that I guess were around before the ChatGPT moment. And then the new kid in town, what people do these days, they use AI as a judge. Where you ask AI to evaluate its output, you would often do this with a smaller model to like save some money on like a percentage of your code, but yeah, the whole idea behind that is AI is pretty smart, and it doesn't necessarily need reference data for certain aspects it can check for. Like, are these sentences short? Or is it comprehensible? Is easy language being used? Does it explain it for a 5-year-old? These are examples where AI shines because it can like openly evaluate that. It can also, you can prompt it to tell you why it rated something the way it did. And Chip Hoyen wrote about that in her book AI Engineering. The overlap with human evaluators, how they would rate the readability of a text, let's say, is 85%. So actually pretty high. So that's a good reason why you use AI to judge AI. And yeah, nowadays with like ultra fast inference, you can even do it on the fly. Whenever you respond to a customer request, if you're like an airline and you have a like an airline chatbot, you can just like loop one more time through your evaluation process to make sure the message you respond is not toxic, not wrong, it's not giving your Chevy out for $1. And here's a graph of like inference providers. Yeah, GPUs are like more on the left side, and then yeah, we get up to 3,000 tokens per second right now. So yeah, it's really, you can really squeeze in evaluation steps, and you should, to make sure yeah, you're doing a good job as an engineer and you feel safe and comfortable about the answers you provide. Cool, yeah, that was a little bit about methods. Those 5 are still in use, like in one way or another. LLM as a judge is definitely like on the horizon more and more. We have all these frameworks like braintrust or DeepEval, Phoenix by Arise that allow you to track LLMs and to like measure the quality of them. And but there's still a lot of things you can consider when doing an evaluation process. For instance, we can evaluate on different levels. At a previous company, I had the task to automate the job of email production specialists. So on behalf of a company such as Levi's, we would send out emails to probably some of you, if you ever signed up for the Levi's newsletter. And that was done in a very structured, curated way. But obviously, AI can help to make this process, which is manual to some degree, in a way more optimized way. And we would start with a document that we got provided by Levi's. We would transform that and then turn this into a beautiful LLM, email that hopefully like captures your attention. And for that, yeah, we would look at the individual components and use individual models for some tasks, and then also at the end-to-end result. Something that actually for me was the most interesting part was, so I had these production specialists, and they were really good at what they're doing. And they were really careful about trusting AI. And because we've all seen it fail, we've seen the examples earlier, and but it's their job that the email looks perfect. So a way to actually capture the trust was by giving them, taking multiple screenshots from the end system that they're so used to, and just giving them to them once the pipeline ran and the email was created, so that they could see, oh yeah, now I see that the email is there, it's scheduled for this date, it goes to that audience, and all these little parameters that they had to tediously click and select and drag and drop, that we can just like, yeah, have through parsing and then an agent-based system. Really, really interesting, yeah, how you need to then engage the user in order to gain their trust. Yeah, and then another one, how you can evaluate systems is like term-based. That's more for like chat apps such as an airline that has a customer support, or task-based, which is even easier, that you just try to understand if the task was executed or not. Yeah, and then once you understand kind of, okay, what are the bits and pieces that move around that I want to analyze, you kind of want to understand, okay, what should the system do? I worked on a blog pipeline that creates blog posts yesterday. And so I looked at the Microsoft guidelines for how to draft good blog articles, technical writing. And yeah, you just then prompt the LLM in one way or in different phases to write short sentences, to not use third language or passive language. That's what it shouldn't do. And then, yeah, you can also define out-of-scope aspects such as, certain links we don't want to show or so that you can then tell it to remove. And on average, most systems, or when you build your AI system and you integrate evaluation, you kind of want to track a couple metrics. 2.3 is the average that Chip found in her research. And then you can check for different factors. There's an example for customer support. So whenever you have a conversation, is that relevant? Like the responses that the LLM produces, are they matching the flight change you asked for? Factual consistency, is it talking about helicopters or like just aircraft? I don't know. And then safety, is it responding in a nice way? These are things you kind of want to define, what is good, what is bad in this regard. And then, while it's really hard for humans and also LLMs to be like, oh, this is the best essay ever, they're really good at relative, and we humans are also really good at relative comparisons. So if we listen to two songs, it's really hard to say if that's the best song you've ever listened to. That's also very subjective. But at least it's easier for you to be like, oh yeah, I guess I like this song more than the previous version or the previous album or whatsoever. So like whenever you do look for evaluations, try to have it rated and give it its feedback. To make sure you understand like if you're working with something good or something less good, at least in a relative fashion. And then one thing that is really important, if you're an AI practitioner, then you want to align your business metrics with, your LLM outputs and your eval that you optimize for with business metrics. So for instance, this is an example. If a higher factual consistency allows us to automate more support requests, then we absolutely want to strive for that. And then business values people often optimize for stickiness, daily active users, weekly active users, and engagement, how long you stay in a conversation. With an airline, probably should be really short. That's what I would strive for. With a AI-based therapist, probably longer. All right. Methods and datas. We can define different parts of the system in different ways. So we can have classifiers for toxicity, graders, OpenAI calls them. We can use semantic similarity for to understand if a response is relevant or not. AI judges, we talked about. For factual consistency, all the facts claimed in a sentence compared to all the facts claimed in a sentence. How many of them are factual and are not, to get like to a percentage. And oftentimes in reality, you combine a bunch of LLM models at different steps with a bunch of different features. Never forget, you can sometimes, they change it very often, but get also logarithmic probabilities out of your model. And then if you normalize them, you kind of understand in a classification problem how much it attributed or classified a certain value for. And then another way to evaluate is with humans, which should be your North Star. And you should try to do this by yourself every day, a little bit to see what's happening in your system, and then maybe you get to have a team that does part of that for you. The last one is data annotations. Whenever you build a system, like I did with this email automation tool, try to get actual production data because, you get PDFs, Word documents, Google Sheets, all of that, and it is so heterogeneous that you kind of want to make sure you think of those. So that's about the process. Now to some metrics. We're going a bit quicker through this. There's different things in a conversational. So the metrics that we're going to talk through now, essentially they give you ways to track different scenarios. So if you're in a conversation, you want to look for role adherence, meaning does the LLM pretend to be a customer support agent for an airline, or is it a doctor in the next scenario? Is the conversation complete? is all the info there that you require to change a flight or cancel a flight reservation. Is the conversation relevant? Sometimes the human may just start talking about the weather, and then you kind of want to have your LLM kind of push the conversation back to the topic at hand, which is a flight change, for instance. Sometimes the bot goes rogue, and yeah, you kind of want to like observe that and deal with it. It's also, and I don't know how many of you experience that, but models degrade very often, particularly when there's a new version of ChatGPT on the horizon. Then you kind of feel like they're using quantized models of the previous good models behind the API. And that's when you then realize somehow it doesn't work as well anymore as it used to. Yeah, so I think it's like so important to constantly like check for metrics like this one to understand, okay, is the model quality still consistently the same? And then another one that's almost a classic is knowledge retention. Yeah, if you talk about a flight from Seattle to Alaska, and then later you ask it to change the flight, it shouldn't talk about a flight to San Francisco. Safety. Yeah, really important, particularly for, again, like aspects like this one earlier with the stomachs, the stones that should help our stomachs to digest better. Yeah, is there like any, and this would go into, I think, almost non-advice as a category, like, yeah, don't give out advices, particularly in the medical, legal, or financial domain. Just like prompt the LLM not to do so. And we've seen that if we asked ChatGPT what we should do with our cat, if it doesn't behave in the right way, then it will tell us that we should seek medical attention and not the advice of an LLM. Bias is something we should always check for. If your LLM says the businessman closed the deal while his female assistant took notes, then that's clearly biased for gender. And that's not okay because, yeah, we don't want to feed to stereotypes. And obviously, it can be the other way around. So these things, yeah, won't leave your company in a good light if you don't control for them and check for them regularly. But yeah, they also can have legal consequences. For instance, also if you leak PII. So let's say, oh yeah, Mohammed, here is your customer data and your social security number. Then you know, oh, if I see my social security number here, probably OpenAI is aware of that too now because somebody like put that into the prompt. And like it's kind of these things that you want to avoid because they make you feel probably really uncomfortable. Yeah, all these are really important, and I don't want to brush too much over them. One thing, like how you would check for that is, again, like toxicity, for instance. You take a sentence, you ask the LLM how many statements are in this sentence, and I would tell you, yeah, there's like 3 statements in there, if it's a long sentence, let's say. And then you ask it how many toxic statements, or how many of these statements are toxic, and I would say like 1. Then you would have a 25% toxicity for the sentence if you use an LLM as a judge. And yeah, most frameworks out there provide these out of the box. And you don't even need to do the prompting, what you define as a toxic or bias topic. But it's really, I think, interesting to look into these, how they're being used. Agents are all the rave. When you deal with them, they really can go everywhere. So while you also should make sure they're like not toxic, you can also test here for essentially with LLM as a judge for task completion. So did it rebook my flight that I wanted to, that I'm about to take? And then the second one is that is actually not an LLM-based one or a non-LLM metric, which is tool correctness. That's when you essentially, yeah, like you ask it a question about, I don't know, what's the weather going to be like tomorrow? And then you want to see if it used the weather tool that you hooked into, like the tool set of those agents. And if it didn't, then you actually kind of think that it probably made up the weather. Or, yeah, maybe it did a web research, but that also then shouldn't be what it was supposed to do. So, yeah, it's also a good metric to like be aware of, particularly when you build agent systems. One that's on the horizon, or also more and more important. And the last one we touch upon, there's actually way more, but those are the last three, is multimodal metrics. So is an image that you generated actually coherent? How can you check that? Well, you could use another model and then have the model look at the image and create a description, and then you compare your prompt to the description that the model came up with to understand like if both have a similar meaning of what was generated. Same with helpfulness, like design an exit sign. Does that actually help? And image editing, change my background color from green to red. You can then evaluate with an LLM as a judge if the new background color is red. These are ways to essentially check for that. So we have a couple of ways to evaluate. LLM as a judge being the most recent and prominent one these days. We have all these different metrics we can use. So how do we actually like now build a system that optimizes for the right thing? And for that, we're going to take a little example where we're going to take a look at a classification of like little bills. And yeah, essentially, when you build a system, you always want to have business metrics in mind because you want to kind of save the company money or make more money. Or at least create a public image that is not toxic, I guess. And an easy way to do this is you don't need an LLM, but what you do is you create yourself a Python function, and then you put as inputs your true negatives, true positives, whatever is suitable for that use case, and you align your eval results with that. So whatever comes out of your eval results as positive or negative, you would then feed into that function. And here on the right, we have almost a McKinsey-style setup where we have, our company processes 1 million receipts a year. They cost 20 cents, so it's 200K that we spend on that. If we have to audit one, it's $2. If we miss to audit one, it's $30. And you can translate that into a function essentially like this. And then, usually leadership will help you with that because they came up with the initiative, and then will help you to understand, okay, how can we optimize the system to be less expensive? Yeah, and there's 7 steps that essentially help you to build eval-driven processes or systems. The first one is, understand the issue. When I built my email production system, leadership said this is a role where, or a field where AI can have tremendous impact, but it didn't really have a lot of details. So then I went to the business unit, I talked to the experts, I tried to understand how they work. And honestly, having been at a couple of different companies and having spoken to different companies all summer, it's very normal these days to replace non-AI workflows with AI workflows since they work really well. And then once you kind of have an idea what you should do and like the help from leadership, you then try to get to examples. So here on the right side, we see a receipt. You want to collect a couple of those and then understand what needs to be looked for when we process them. And then you can actually start quickly building a prototype V0 system, it's called. And this will help you to then, just see what your current LLM can do. And it can be as easy as you have a prompt, you have the input parameters like this image, and then you have your false positive, true negative rate, and then you just let it process essentially the few examples you have, and you see like how good it's performing, and then you can improve from there. And once you've done that, you usually, once you had your first few examples, you then will try to get more and better data. Sometimes you don't have a ground truth, so you just build your preliminary or your draft truth, where you think, okay, are these the receipts we see a lot? I don't know, I took a few hotel ones and I took a few flight bills or like receipts. Are those actually representative? And then you go to domain experts because they know best what they usually see. So you go to the finance department or whatever, and you talk to them like, hey, what kind of receipts are you processing? And then through their feedback and iterations, you actually understand how they prioritize certain features and aspects. Step 5 then is you always look back at your business metrics. So let's say we work on improving the accuracy of filtering out like identical items that were captured as 1, but they're actually 2, like the first 2, which both cost $14.14 on this one. Yeah, then we see if we actually like drive our numbers up or lower. It's like you always want to use the business metrics to essentially improve. Yeah, and then to the 2 last steps. With a good direction and a guidance, you can improve your system constantly and also yeah, continue to add more data to it to see if it still behaves the same. And when the thing happens, it feels like every 2 months or 3 months, there's a new big model in town that is amazing, then you can just plug that in and see if it actually performs for your task as well as the previous model. Happened a lot at previous companies where they'd be like, okay, oh, there's a new Anthropic model. Have you already tested that? And it was like published 2 hours ahead of time. But with a setup like this, you essentially just change the endpoint. You run the evaluation. And if it's a couple hundred or 1,000 examples, it should be fairly quick. And you'll be like, yeah, it's working good. We should use it. Or you recommend not to do it. Yeah, that's how you can then see quickly with your system if you're doing the right thing. All right, okay. This is my last slide. The 4 things I wanted to emphasize one more time because I wanted you to take them home. If we don't own the foundation model or we can't influence the training of it, which is very often the case, yeah, then the only thing we can change is either the model itself or the prompt. And so we kind of want to understand how it behaves, and we want to measure that on a constant basis to understand if it degrades or gets, or if we have to switch to a different one. Yeah, if that is worth switching or yeah, improving on our side. With super fast inference these days, we can just run evaluations also in real time. So and then like have an LLM cross-check if we should really recommend stones to be eaten for digestion. Thirdly, evaluation metrics always should align with business value, but then also aspects such as fairness, toxicity, and so on, so you don't create angry customers or bad publicity. And lastly, eval-driven development, like the process we just talked through, it will help you to sleep at night because you know if you don't get pinged by your system because the evals are off, then you know it's working and functioning as it should, and yeah, you'll go to bed in like a more relaxed manner. Sweet, thank you so much.
Thank you, Seb. We have time for 5 to 7 minutes, so for questions. So,
any questions? Back there. Oh, all the way. Okay. I wanted to repeat your question.
So curious, I've seen a lot of really good frameworks for evals. These are one of the first ones where I've seen integration of business metrics. I'm kind of interested in your take around the sacredness of a business metric and its plausibility of outcomes of like actual correlative metrics versus causal metrics on your eval. How are you kind of making sure that when you're defining those in your eval that you're making sure the metric you're trying to measure the evals against is actually going to be making your impact because of your implementation, not necessarily from an indirect thing that you can't control in your environment?
Yeah, that's always a hard part because there's always like this X you can't control and it just happens. For instance, I think I heard last week that this year, I don't know if it was in Germany because I listen to a German podcast a lot, but or in the world wider, people are creating a lot of fake receipts to then give them to their company. And I don't think you can really control that, unfortunately. And then your system will go down, or I don't even know, the system we just talked through is that it may hopefully classify them as fake, but it probably won't because it's not set up for that. So you will then have to align with it. Well, that's the good news why our jobs will always exist. we always will have to adapt and be on our feet to actually deal with issues like that the moment we learn about them. And yeah, I don't think you can ever solve it all, if that answers your question. Thank you.
Hi, so I have two questions here. So the first was earlier when you were saying you wanted to evaluate the foundational models using kind of like other AI kind of models, it struck me as a bit recursive, I guess. Like, how do you ensure that the AI doing the evaluation is accurate, I guess?
So using AI as a judge, how you can ensure that it actually is like reliable? Yeah, there's a million different ways. It's also a little bit wide-based at times. So with the system that you build, it's oftentimes, like the email production use case I talked about earlier, this is multiple steps. And while some steps are very easy, straightforward, like, okay, here's the intake document, and we just like transform whatever it is into a string, and we send it to the LLM to essentially parse it in an efficient way. There you can then quickly, like you can use an easy model almost, like, a smaller model with less parameters, a dumber model, to essentially, do the task. And then you can take a couple of examples, like a subset, 10%, 20%, whatsoever, to evaluate then, let's say an expensive one, such as Sonnet 5, to evaluate if the results that we're seeing now from this document actually are plausible, looking at the document and the parsed results. And so, you often would have like kind of this teacher-student relationship. But again, things can slip through that shouldn't, and so you're never 100% sure. You're just getting closer to being sure. Yeah.
Got it, that makes sense. Something else I guess I was just curious about is, since you've had a lot of experience with natural language processing, this is a space like personally I would like to learn more about. So like, for someone who's like just diving into this space, what are some areas that you'd recommend people kind of starting off with? And what are some areas that you see like what are some up-and-coming areas for NLP that you think are worth further investigation going forward?
Yeah, NLP, I guess, has been taken by storm by LLMs because a lot of traditional use cases, things you could use Spacey for instance, was like identify statistically what word types you have. It's really good at finding verbs or entities, so named entity recognition, if this is a company or an individual, and so on. LLMs are really good at that. So it's this tricky thing where you can do it way cheaper and faster, well, until recently, if you used like computational systems such as NLTK or Spacey. Nowadays, with super fast inference where, I don't know, thousands of tokens per second, you actually can probably be as fast as Spacey, or really fast too. Good resources, I think, are Andrew Ng's deep learning AI course that you could just like do from home. And it's, he has an NLP specialization where I think the first 2 chapters particularly are on what I would call the basics of NLP, such as LSTMs, and he introduces, I think, NLTK embeddings, and I don't know, measures like cosine similarity, how you calculate that, and so on. Pretty good work. And running.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh, in that corner.
In the course of evaluation and thinking about prompt injection and security, it has seemed to me like there's almost no perfect solution to that. But other than perhaps Camel might have come closest. Do you have any opinions on that or experience with that? Like how to, when you're evaluating how to make sure that your system cannot be exploited by someone more subtly than that car dealership example. It seems like that's still a very unsolved problem.
Was it last week or 2 weeks ago when OpenAI and I think Microsoft in the same week released their browsers, agentic browsers? And then somebody at our company asked if they're safe to use. And then I quickly did some research, and because I was curious myself. And doesn't seem like they are, because like within minutes they could like mislead people and like add or inject instructions into the HTML or JavaScript rendered code to do the LLM, like to have it give out passwords and so on. Same with earlier what we talked about, like if you can actually change a flight through the LLM interface, it's scary. I don't know. So I think systems like chatbots probably should never have access to corporate databases with social security numbers in them. I think that should just be a practice. Pretty sure that's broken at this moment I talk about it. But there's no 100% guarantee. Evaluations help you though to get closer to safety. But yeah, like earlier, we always have to be on our feet and see what's happening. And people try to come up with good ideas all the time. I read in that article, that could be biased, I don't know, that Perplexity's browser is safer. But I'm pretty sure that OpenAI will match that pretty soon because they work day and night on that. Does that help? All right. Oh, another one? Oh,
Just one more, unless there's someone else.
all right.
Very intrigued also by what you call the intelligence paradox. When there was a news item a few months ago that sometimes it seemed like the latest Claude model could tell when it was being tested. You know that example with the thing about the pizza recommendation stuck in the long corpus? I wonder in this context if that's the kind of thing that you have to worry about, or if that's only for when you're trying to test a model that's going to accept anything from anybody, you know, the chatbot model.
I think, it is so hard. Some models, or oftentimes you feel like if there's a benchmark from 2020, an LLM has probably read about it. And then there's models coming out where, like, I was psyched when Meta announced the Llama 4 series with up to, I think, 1 million tokens of context window. It was incredible. Like, I read this and I was like, this is incredible. I think the results on LLM Arena were pretty low, and somehow people don't talk too much about that model anymore, sadly. Scout, I think, was one of them. But yeah, I think a platform then like LLM Arena gives you somehow an idea or indication what humans think about the model, how it produces text and how good it is. I don't know, when I write emails these days, I tend to sometimes, I love to use Shield M4.6 because that's a pretty epic one, but then also Gemini 2.5, I think, creates very human sounding texts. But then ChatGPT always creates dashes. So if you read a text and you see a dash in there, like that longer dash, that it's like almost 2 dashes, you can be pretty sure what you're seeing there is copied from somebody's chat conversation. Sadly, yeah. All right.
Okay, thank you, Seb.
Thanks.